All right, everyone. After a quick break, we're back at it here at the Voice of College Football National Signing Day. Check out the first segment we provided early this morning on through the noon hour with reports from South Carolina, Ole Miss, and Iowa. We are checking in once again for another couple hours here at the Voice of College Football. We've got a 3 p.m. Eastern time live stream with Steve Dace of Michigan Podcast talking playoff game, Alabama and Michigan. Then we'll come back with another update. We're talking Oklahoma State, Oregon, and Wisconsin over the next several minutes. We did have Cody Stovall checking in from Locked On Cowboys. I don't know what happened to Cody. Hopefully he's doing okay and we'll be able to punch right back in. But in the meantime, we will check out the rankings where we believe Oregon has made a major move in the rankings. Let's check him out here. Oregon up to number 6, and Ohio State has taken a tumble, although that is not necessarily unexpected going into this day. If you were understanding of some of the leans and some of the crystal ball projections. So Georgia's at number 1, of course, and they continue to just stack on recruits, 27 commits, Alabama at 2, Florida State at 3. And then, well, we do have the most recent, I just checked it a few minutes ago, Ohio State had dropped to number 5. They're at number 4 right now. Maybe they picked up a few more. Let's see, they're at 21, so I'm not seeing a change there in commits. But again, Texas at 5, Oregon at 6, and we will talk about some more of those specifics coming up in the next few minutes. But for right now, we're talking Cowboys and Oklahoma State. We got our guy Cody Stovall here from Locked On Oklahoma State. Cody, what's going on today?
You know what? Thus far, I'm enjoying the day. It's kind of nice in this fun National Signing Day where typically you'll have a couple big surprises. Fortunately for us, the only big surprise is us flipping somebody from TCU to Oklahoma State. We haven't lost anybody that stayed committed for quite some time. So, yeah, all is well in Cowboy land.
So who's the flip?
We got LaDainian Fields to flip from TCU to come to Oklahoma State. Now, we were in on LaDainian Fields very early as a wide receiver, but it appears as though, right, he really wants to play defensive back, and we found the ability to help him out there. So, yeah, that was a good surprise today. And then we got a running back out of South Carolina, 6'2", 225 pounds, that ran for 2,200 yards, and somehow we were only his really only big-time Power 5 offer. So, yeah, when you watch his film, it doesn't really make a lot of sense how he kind of got swept under the rug, but in today's transfer market era, there is going to be kids that do get swept under the rug, in my opinion, now more than ever before, because a lot of these recruiting services do have to divvy up some attention to the transfer market.
So, of course, Cody, the first thing that people are going to note is a class that's ranked at number 55. And when you've got a program that is looking to finish in the top 25, as Oklahoma State typically does in that range, that's not keeping up with the standard, but there's a whole lot more that goes into it. So are you pretty happy with this class?
I am. A 16-man high school class. It shows a lot of different things. One of the things being that we're still very focused on development. Yeah, a lot of people think that if you just plug and play with the transfer portal, you'll always be okay. And there's some formulas that say that might work. But in my opinion, you got to have a decent amount of the developmental side of the game as well. And then we've got some guys on there like Landon Cleveland that is going to be good enough to potentially play as a freshman. Landon Cleveland's the big get of the class, right? We've only got 2 guys in this class that have significant offers from places like Texas and Michigan and Alabama. Landon Cleveland's one of those. David Kabongo's one of those. I think that the biggest thing to take into account here is this is a very defensive-heavy class. Well, we've got a lot of youth defensively, but clearly in this system, we wanted a little bit more size, a little bit more speed, and versatility. So we've got linebackers that have played years of safety. We've got safety that have played years of corner. And it just developmental wise, we're going to have a lot of Swiss Army knife style capabilities with this incoming class. So yeah, the number's not great. And if you're a top 25 team, I mean, technically Oklahoma State is a top 10 team over the last 10 to 12 years as far as wins are concerned. It's hard to always be a top 25 team when you're always recruiting in the 40s and 50s. Clearly, the Rob Glass body by glass system that we use to bulk people up is very good at Oklahoma State. But obviously, the development side of the thing is big for us. And then we've got some guys in the transfer portal that we'll use to kind of cover up some needs. But we really only have 6 scholarship transfers thus far. So we really don't have a lot of needs to fill. So this is more of the development for next season, which has me very, very excited.
Cody, there's a thought out there that you know better than I do, and you probably hear it a lot more often than I do, but I know that it's been out there for a long time that Mike Gundy doesn't necessarily invest in recruiting, care about recruiting. We saw recruiting budgets come out several months ago that were analyzed and tracked, and Oklahoma State was near the bottom of Power 5 schools in regards to how much money they spent in recruiting. So do you think that that's a fair assessment of the situation?
I mean, I do. Unfortunately, he's kind of had to come to the realization, aka this season, that this is just the way of the world now. And he's been, I don't want to say forced, but he's been encouragingly nudged along in regards to understanding that the NIL era it's here and it's not going to go anywhere. And if you completely do everything predicated upon development, you're going to find yourself every few years moving backwards. So I do think that Mike Gundy now sees the writing on the wall, and he's been a lot more forthcoming recently in regards to NIL and how the collective is important. And then when you look at Oklahoma State only having the 6 transfers, clearly we made an emphasis on the NIL packaging because we have all 6 starting offensive linemen back. That's right. I can count. That's one more than 5 because we have one guy coming back that started for a couple years and then dealt with a couple injuries. So we get 6 offensive linemen back. Still hearing 100% great news around Ollie Gordon. So, yeah, we've had Gundy embrace this thing, maybe a little late, but rather later than never.
Yeah, so the transfer portal, what are your thoughts about what positions are needed, if those are being addressed, some of the additions that they've made? You're talking about, on one hand, being able to secure the guys that are already on the roster, something that was a problem last offseason that you just talked about. Also, I'm looking at Kobe Hilton, a safety that comes in from UTEP. I see an offensive tackle, Isaiah Glass, coming in from Arizona State. Do you expect Gundy and company to be even more active in the portal for the rest of the offseason?
I do feel like that we've strategically targeted a few different positions. The biggest position of need seems to be a little bit of help at defensive end. You know, we've got a young guy in Deshaun Brown that everybody's very high on, but we lose Nathan Latu this season. And then we also lose Cody Waltersheed, which is another 6-year senior. So the biggest position of need appears to be defensive end. We're hearing a lot of positive things about Reggie Grimes, right? A potential transfer from OU to potentially help fill that void of somebody like an Anthony Goodlow. But yeah, I definitely feel like defensive line is something that we're going to be heavily invested in. And we also need a couple more wide receivers. We like the youth and the depth that we have at wideout, but you never can have too many quality wide receivers. So I expect us to hit a few more wide receivers and defensive linemen throughout this portal process for sure.
Bowl games coming up against Texas A&M. You excited about that?
I am. Anytime you have the opportunity to take on a big brand, especially a brand that's nationally recognized in this NIL transfer market era, that the SEC style of matchup and them being former Big 12 foes, it does have some storylines. I like the hiring of Mike Elko. I love the hiring of Colin Klein, but I don't know how competitive the game's going to be. It shouldn't be competitive, Mark. They're missing half their daggone starting roster. They have, the brand new offense coordinator, brand new defense coordinator. The interim head coach has already accepted another job, so he's taking a flight. when the bowl game's over. I don't see how Texas A&M is going to be able to field a team that can beat Oklahoma State, right? We're returning 90% of our dudes. They're returning like maybe 29% of their dudes. So, yeah, I like the bowl game. I like the matchup. I like some of the storylines. I do wish they didn't have as many outgoing, because it would make the game a little bit more competitive. Because here's the deal. If we win, everyone's going to say, well, of course you won, right? They're missing half their starters. But if we lose, then it's going to be an indictment on how terrible the Big 12 is, and Oklahoma State being representation of the Big 12 just proves that half the SEC, you know the storylines, man. They write themselves if we don't win. So, yeah, hopefully it's a big old boat racing of the Aggies. But other than that, yeah, I do feel pretty good, and I like the bowl game.
Any particular players in that game that either we should be looking out for, or guys that maybe we don't know a whole lot about, but it's big for them to get that jump on 2024 and try to get a starting spot or make more of an impact?
Well, typically, you're very well aware, the bowl prep does give you a lot of time to get some of the younger guys mixed up into the packaging, because it doesn't count against, right, the scholarships and all that fun jazz. So I do expect, in the same vein of the wide receiver room, I expect a couple of young wide receivers, maybe Cameron Hurd or Jalen Pope, to get in on the action. From a running back perspective, most people obviously are going to be pretty focused on Ollie Gordon, especially with Jaden Nixon now in the transfers, the backup running back. I expect a Michigan State transfer, Elijah Collins, to have a pretty good showing and a pretty good day. And Nick Martin's first team All Big 12, and somehow he got snubbed by Danny Stutzman on the All-American list. So I expect Nick Martin to come out on a mission.
All right, good stuff. Oklahoma State taking on Texas A&M in the Texas Bowl. Let's not forget about these bowl games with this transfer portal going on all the time, folks. There's still football to be watched. I love bowl season. I still love it. I think it's gotten kicked to the curb, and I don't like it.
Well, there's just so many bowl games, right? It used to be a badge of honor if you made it to a bowl game. Nowadays, all you got to do is go 5-7, and you got a pretty good shot at a bowl game. So, in my opinion, it's supposed to be a reward on a successful season, right?
Well, 6-6. Let's not push it. I think we got one 5-7 team playing in a bowl game.
We always got a 5-7 team, and to me, that's when it got too crazy.
Yeah, they created too many spots.
Yeah, too many bowl games. So you got to start letting 5-7 teams in. Now, it does work out in the benefit at times, right? Because we recently watched a bowl game where, the team wasn't even supposed to be really in a bowl, and then they got a bowl W. So I do like that there's some benefits to the extra bowl games, but it takes away from what the bowl games are supposed to be, in my opinion.
Yeah, somebody wasn't working out the math too well. When you've got 133 teams and you got 41 bowl games, so you got 82 spots, so you got more than half. More than likely, you're going to have to invite some 5-7 teams. But I think it's just Minnesota. I think they're the only 5-7 team that made it. So there is that. All right, Cody, appreciate you stopping by.
Absolutely.
Good luck with the rest of National Signing Day, but it looks like everything's pretty well sewn up.
Yeah, no big surprises, which is nice.
All right, Cody. Have a great rest of your holiday here. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all those good things. And we'll catch up soon, man.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas to you as well. Go Pokes.
All right, Cody Stovall. He's on the Lockdown Oklahoma State Network there with his podcast. You see his other vitals there. And we are going to catch up with Oregon and with Wisconsin. And what is extra interesting about the situation with Oregon, we're going to talk to Eric Scopel at 247 Sports here in just a few minutes, is we've got a big flip coming in that we alluded to before Cody jumped on. So there it is. So you've got Jeremiah McClellan, not to be confused with Jeremiah Smith, the number one rated wide receiver in the country, who apparently has followed through on his commitment. We talked about this earlier today, and we've been talking about it for weeks, especially on the Miami and the Florida State channels, that the number one rated player in the country, Jeremiah Smith, may flip from Ohio State to stay closer to home, either at Miami or at Florida State. But apparently he has signed at Ohio State. But here is a big flip for Oregon. And I can't think that this is a huge loss for Ohio State. It's a big loss because he's a talented player and may turn out to be an outstanding player at the collegiate level. But wide receiver Jeremiah McClellan flips to Oregon, and what it means for Ohio State. You see the name on the byline to the article on 247 Sports, Bill Kurelic. Well, Bill Kurelick's going to join us at 5 p.m. Eastern time. So we are going to get the latest on Ohio State recruiting, National Signing Day, and just another tremendous haul for Ohio State, although they did have a few flips go against them in recent days. Another top 5 class for Ohio State. It ranks currently at number 4 in the nation. But they lose this one to Oregon. I got to think, especially if that was an offensive lineman, if that was a linebacker, if that was fill in the blank defensive lineman, a cornerback, then that would be a much bigger loss. But Ohio State's going 6-7 deep at wide receiver with extremely talented players. That would be the one player at the one position that they could afford to lose. Again, not that it's a good sign or a good decision in the Ohio State camp, but Oregon pulls off the flip. Oregon, under Dan Lanning, these 2 recruiting cycles, and in a sense 3, has done a nice job of doing just this, flipping talent leading into National Signing Day. To the comments, and we will take your calls. Keep in mind, we've got an open window of about 13 minutes before Eric Scopel of 247 Sports jumps on with us. In the meantime, give us a call here at the Voice of College Football. A huge day is underway. Catch the previous 2.5-hour live stream. Now we're going up to 3 p.m. here. Then we're going to turn it around with Steve Dace Michigan podcast and break down Michigan, Alabama live with all of you. Then we're coming back at 4:30 with the Kentucky and Ohio State updates and possibly Clemson and Penn State. We've got our Florida State show at 6, our Miami show at 7. So keep all of that in mind. Also, something to keep in mind with Christmas almost here. And what better way to celebrate Christmas than to give your special someone, whether that's a son, daughter, significant other, whomever that is in your life, some merch from the Voice of College Football store. Look at that. We've got some new items here. We've got some new items here. So I'm getting to see some of these things for the first time myself. All right, we've got the kids' Voice of College Football crew neck t-shirt. Love that. Keep in mind when you see these prices, shipping is free. Sometimes you get hit with shipping and you think you're going to spend a certain amount of money. Then you get hit with this and this and that. And the shipping include. Nope, no shipping here. Shipping included. I understand. I've been waiting to see this baby, that this denim jacket is just the highest of quality. So keep this in mind. And we have tested this out with everyone who's bought merchandise to say, let us know. But our aim was to combine price and quality. We wanted to get the best merchandise possible. We didn't want this stuff falling apart 6 months from now. So we went for high quality items because we want you to be happy. So that denim jacket, I think that's going to be on my Christmas list right there. I like that. I just found out about this jacket like 25 minutes ago. So I am looking forward to that one right there. I think I see the blue. I see the blue there, but I'm going to go myself with the black. I am going to go with the black. I'm going to have to do that. Yes. All right. Good stuff there. What else do we have here? Some nice items. We've got the mug. We've got a couple different mugs. We've got the black glossy mug. We've got the white glossy mug. All sorts of good selections, folks, right there. And let's get back to the recruiting news and updates. Will's here.
What's up,
Will, what's
Mark?
going on? How are you?
I'm doing well. Not a stressful signing day for the Irish like last year with the last second flips to Oregon, and then Peyton Bowen then flipped from Oregon to Oklahoma. That was a whole movie.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, happy with the class. I think we have some really good talent coming in.
Okay, so we're going to find your class on the fly. I think you're about number 8 or 9 in the country. So are we holding out for anybody in particular?
Well, I think everyone should be signing. Yeah. What really excites me about this class is Cam Williams. I think he can do a lot of damage right away for the Irish at receiver, and that's a position that's been very challenging for the Irish. And just his tape, and the fact that he will be able to play right away, maybe not start right away with the transfers coming in at receiver, but yeah, he's 5-star on the composite for 247, and that's the first player in a long time that was able to reach that since Golden Tate at the receiver position.
Yeah, so we also have the 6 transfers coming in. Riley Leonard's the guy that everyone's talking about, of course. You got Bo Collins coming in from Clemson at wide receiver. He's probably, other than Leonard, the most recognizable name. Any of these guys stand out to you on the transfer portal edition list?
Well, I like the receiver from FIU. It's Mitchell, right? That's his last name?
Oh, yes. Yep.
I mean, he was doing really well. He was like his tape. He was doing well against the Power 5 teams he was playing at receiver. I mean, I know he had a big game against Arkansas. I know Arkansas wasn't great last year, but he was doing really well in that game. So he's probably going to be wide receiver 1 heading into the year.
And Notre Dame's actually playing Arkansas this year, right?
No, Texas A&M.
Oh, Texas A&M. I thought they had a date coming up against Arkansas. Okay, Texas A&M. Very nice. I think we talked about Riley Leonard the last time he jumped on. I just think he's being over-publicized a bit. I think he's a really good player. I admire him. He obviously plays with injuries. He's a gamer, all those things. But I'm not looking at elite quarterback when I look at Riley Leonard. And maybe things are going to crystallize for me when he's got more talent around him. But he looks... Who would I compare Riley Leonard to? I'm gonna come up with a comp on him here real soon.
Do you think he's better than Ian Book?
Well, Ian Book was I was going to compare their sizes. Okay, Riley Leonard's at 6'4", 212, so he's a pretty sizable guy. That's his last listing. So I was about to say that Book looked thicker, bigger. Book didn't have the escapability that Riley Leonard has. He was a willing runner. He kept defenses honest. He could find a gap and move the chains and pick up a first down. But Riley Leonard's a better runner.
So Mark, another player that I've been hearing really good things about is Kedron Young, running back out of Texas.
All right. Have you watched him at all?
So, I mean, this is most of the stuff I know about the recruits is through Irish Breakdown, but Brian Driscoll said that he's like a better version of Audric Estime out of high school. So he thinks he'll have a very successful career at Notre Dame. but I don't think he's going to start right away because the running back room's just stacked. So, but he's definitely by his junior year, I think he'll have a really strong year as well.
Okay. We're going to talk to Nick Shipkowski tomorrow, so we'll get a further breakdown. Hopefully Brian can stop by as well at some point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, him and Gerby Lambert at O-line. I think he's going to be like another like top first round pick for sure at O-line. And I think he's up. You got to go up, I think, for him. Yeah, I think I believe Ohio State was also looking at him. Mark, do you remember? Ohio State guys.
I don't remember that name, but I'm not a big recruiting guy. But we usually go through all the Buckeye targets, but I don't remember that name.
I mean, I remember it was really between like Notre Dame and Harvard. He's a really smart, knowledgeable young man. That's what he was looking at as well. But I'm just happy that we don't have any drama at signing day last year because it was looking like a top 5 class, and then like the key commitments just kept going. But
well, that's because the drama went against you, Will. You would like the drama if it went your way.
Yeah, but I know that Notre Dame isn't the type of school to dish out the money to incoming college freshmen. So I don't know if we could see that much drama going towards that. Although, I mean, Kenny Minchie flipped from Pitt, but that wasn't last second.
Yeah, I think that there's a different approach at Notre Dame, and this NIL situation may affect them and has probably affected them with a guy here and there, but I think most of these guys are understanding that will take care of itself if they go in there and perform. That even if they don't get it day one, that they have other aspirations. They have academic aspirations. They have NFL aspirations. They know that the NIL's there for Notre Dame players, but it's just not there day one.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
Although the Riley Leonard situation certainly looked
he's an established college player. So
I understand that, but he's still supposed to be off limits until he gets out there and talks to people and puts himself in the portal.
Yeah, that's fair.
That did look a little. Now, it didn't look good. It doesn't look good, but this is going on everywhere. So it's not like Notre Dame did anything everyone else isn't doing. It's just that it was just so blatantly obvious because there's a lot of attention on him, and also because he just flat out put it out there. I'm off limits. I've made my decision.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sam did the same thing as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think Notre Dame looked at USC and Jordan Addison. I think they were the first ones to really get heat for it, and they're like, well, nothing happened to them, so. I mean, not that that's the morally right thing to do, but I do think that's probably what happened.
Yeah.
Mark, I'm excited. One last thing. I'm excited to hear your Wisconsin guy talk about John Pius, just because I went to high school with him. He was a phenomenal player from our high school. Did phenomenal at William & Mary, and now is at Wisconsin. So I know you got a Wisconsin guy coming in. So
got a Wisconsin guy coming up. We got Oregon jumping on right this second, Will. So I will specifically make sure that I ask him about one more time. What's his name?
John Pius.
John Pius. Okay, we will do that.
All right, I'll keep it. I'm at work, so I won't be chatting, but I'll have the show on.
Thanks, Will. Sounds good. Have a good day.
See ya.
All right, let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. As promised, Eric Scopel, Duck Territory, 247 Sports. Eric, how you doing?
Busy morning. Thanks for the break from all the Twitter stalking, which I've been doing for the last 5 going on 6 hours.
Yeah, relax. We'll get away from the drama. We can just talk about football players, although in a good direction, good flip. There's one, Jeremiah McClellan, that was a flip here just in the last couple hours that went Oregon's way.
Yeah, that was a big one. That was, I think a couple of things to start. good job by Oregon to avoid the flips. We see it every year. Big time players change schools kind of at the last minute. It's hard to keep everybody in place, but Oregon has done an excellent job. They've all 23 verbals that folks went to bed with last night. I think 22 of those have signed. The other has a signing day ceremony at 3 this afternoon. I don't think there's any drama there with Kamar Mathudi, but back to McClellan, to add a player of that caliber at that position specifically, because they lost a couple players to decommitment at receiver over the last couple of months. This was a pretty big add, and this is a player that, talking with some of our national folks over at 24/7 Sports, there's a sense that he could be somebody who could impact things earlier than later, and that's not always the case here. Yeah, you have to go down there. McClellan hasn't officially been announced as a signee, but you go check Twitter. He has officially signed his paperwork. It just maybe the fax machine is running a little slow to Eugene, but big addition. And again, I think somebody who could actually help sooner than later, which again, you don't know if that's always going to be the case or not.
Yeah, my goodness. I don't know when that fax system is going to be replaced, but
yeah, there's got to be something better, isn't there? With all the changes in technology, all the advancements, we're still faxing things.
Yeah, there's been something better in place for a long time, but that's okay. If they are the ones that have to deal with it. I didn't know that they were still selling fax machines. Those repairmen probably get paid high end by the hour, I guess, to keep that thing going.
And they're probably only making money off of universities and high schools.
Absolutely. All right, Eric, when we look at this class, is this hitting needs? Is this hitting, of course, Dan Lanning and his staff they weren't going to get everyone, but did they get the majority of high-end targets?
I think the thing that you really like about this class is the defensive line. And if you scroll right to the top there of you'll see what I'm talking about. A couple of 5-star commitments from Aiden Breland and Elijah Rushing. These are the top 2 defensive line prospects on the West Coast. Oregon went and grabbed them both. Rushing was an Arizona commitment for a really long time. That was the hometown school. I think his brother was also at one point committed there. But to snag him and Breland is huge. There's a lot of optimism that tomorrow will bring Jericho Johnson, who's the 3rd highest rated defensive lineman on the West Coast. He's from Northern California. He's more of a interior defensive lineman, like 6'4", 300. And I've heard he's listed at 300, but I've heard he's closer to 330 right now. So it's certainly a gap filler. But I think that's where you start the conversations with those 2 defensive linemen that they've got already, with Jericho Johnson. It's seemingly, waiting in the wings to be the 3rd. That's where this class kind of has been formed. And that is an area of need, of a pretty desperate need for Oregon, who lost 5 veteran defensive linemen this year to graduation. There's some uncertainty about what Jordan Birch will do, who would be by far their best defensive line returnee. He has a decision to make. If he comes back, he's their top guy. If he doesn't come back, there's a ton of need. So I don't know how much you expect from true freshmen in general to play right away, but there will be opportunity for both Breland and Rushing and potentially Jericho Johnson down the line. And then you can look at the linebackers in this class. That was another one. You got Braden Platt's name right there. If you keep scrolling down, you'll find a couple of others that people are really high on. Kamar Mathudi is the recruit that hasn't officially signed yet, along with McClellan. But then you've got Dylan Williams, who they held off. He was being really heavily recruited by Arizona and I think Nebraska. Kingston Lopa, a kid who might play safety, might play linebacker, but regardless has the size and athleticism. So I think they feel really good about what they did in the front 7. Offensive needs probably weren't as high this year. We can talk about quarterback in a moment. I don't think they needed to get a huge blue chip guy because they've kind of got their current and their future at quarterback set already through the portal. But the positions they didn't need to hit, I thought they hit hard. I think the one spot where you go, maybe there's more attention needed would have been like running back, but I think that would have been more of a luxury ad. And I know Dewan Riggs is one of the more lowly rated players in this cycle that signed, but go watch his tape and see how effective he's been at playing in Washington, D.C. And you can see why there is some optimism and excitement about what he could provide as well.
So, Eric, since you alluded to quarterback and everybody wants to know about quarterback, and it's pretty much a rule that each class should contain one quarterback.
Yeah.
What do we need to know about Luke Moga?
Well, Moga's an excellent athlete. It's funny because up until about a month ago, there were two prep commitments at quarterback with Moga and Michael Van Buren. Van Buren, I believe, ended up signing with Mississippi State. Moga, not the most highly rated guy, and I had heard a couple of weeks ago that there was talk about him maybe playing some receiver or safety or something like that if they needed in a pinch. If they had too many quarterbacks, he was open to maybe moving. Doesn't seem like that's the case anymore. But this is a guy who's got incredible athletic tools, and like I said, the fact that they were talking about moving him position sort of speaks to that. But there's a lot of upside there too, and if he's willing to be patient, and who knows with the transfer portal how patient anyone is willing to be these days, but if he's willing to sit and wait for obviously Dylan Gabriel this year, for Dante Moore for a year, maybe 2 years, maybe he's a guy who you see develop behind these players, and he can, those athletic tools kind of come together, and he could be a really high end player. But he's certainly an intriguing prospect. Both the guys you actually have kind of scrolled there, he and Trent Ferguson, are the kind of two developmental prospects. Ferguson's a guy who's played 2 years of high school football, was a big time basketball prospect for a while, and has kind of decided to focus on football. He's another player who's probably 3 or 4 years from being a contributor, maybe, but the physical tools are there. And Oregon, I think this cycle took a couple of those kind of dart throws and said, hey, let's take a shot. And if these guys develop, they could be big time contributors down the road.
We've got Eric Skopel jumping on the line with us from 247 Sports Duck Territory. Get on over there to Duck Territory on 247 Sports. Check out Eric's work, their podcast. When does that drop typically?
Well, hey, thanks for asking. We actually have Coach Dan Lanning on at about 1:30 this afternoon, so that'll be something to look for. And then we will also be posting a reaction to the day's stuff, I think early tomorrow or later tonight. I'm not sure which, but typically we are like a 10 a.m. operation for when those will be 10 a.m. Pacific time for when those will drop.
How about that, folks? Dan Lanning himself will be on with Eric and the crew there. So you said 1:30 Pacific, correct?
That's right.
So 4:30 Eastern, 1:30 Pacific, Dan Lanning will be on with Eric on Duck Territory's podcast. Excellent.
He's given us 10 minutes, which is probably 10 too many for him today. I'm sure he's busy.
Yeah. No, that says a lot for you and what you guys are doing there to be able to grab the head coach for 10 minutes for any length of time on any day, let alone National Signing Day. There's some pessimism out there about these rankings and about National Signing Day because of the transfer portal and how many of these players are still going to be around. Now, we're going to have to let this era flush out for at least a couple more years, maybe, to start to grab some data and say, okay, what is a successful retention rate of these classes going forward 2-3 years down the line? But because I've always made the defense of these ratings and rankings, not that they're accurate for every player, of course, that would be impossible. There are booms and busts. We all know that. There are guys that come out of nowhere to become J.J. Watt, 2-star to Pro Football Hall of Famer. We've got examples all over the place. But the bulk of these ratings and rankings, and I'll give a check mark to 247 Sports in particular in comparison to your competition, just because you've done a great job of not only accurate rankings and probably the most extensive rankings across the board. Now with the transfer portal, that is also something that 247 has taken the initiative to say, we're going to rank transfer portal players. We're also going to give you a look at these classes from a high school standpoint, from a transfer standpoint, and try to put it together in some kind of system that tells you, okay, this is what the entire class looks like. But what's your thought about how important this day is than what it was 3 years ago, 5 years ago?
It's a really interesting discussion point. And I mean, I've been thinking about it, and we've certainly been talking about it on our podcast, of what is the value of, because like hypothetically, if you have one scholarship available and you can offer it to a 4-star, let's say a pretty good wide receiver recruit who's probably not going to help for a year or two, or you can extend that to a portal guy who has 700, let's say you're Oregon, he has 750 yards at Mississippi State last year, and you think he can come in and be a starter, that's a pretty easy decision. So, I also think, because some folks will say, well, then just go all portal. Well, I don't think that's sustainable. You still need prep players to come through and develop. But I think Oregon is an interesting case study in what they're doing right now at portal, at quarterback and with the portal at quarterback in particular, with, they had Ty Thompson here for 3 years. They brought in a couple of portal guys that have kind of pushed him out. I think Oregon's going to be better for it. I think Oregon upgraded its quarterback situation pretty clearly by adding Dylan Gabriel and Dante Moore over Ty Thompson. So it's the difficult part here too of, the way a lot of fans and folks want to kind of, I guess, assess these players that transfer is like a lack of loyalty. I've seen that a lot this week with players Oregon has lost, or with players Oregon is picking up from other schools saying, oh, they aren't loyal to school X. I just think we have to go ahead and kind of forget about all of that and understand this is what it's going to be, and that ultimately what each school is trying to do each cycle is put the best team out there together. And if you have an opportunity, like I said earlier, to replace or to take a player who's experienced and has been successful at the college level over a kid out of the portal, where it's kind of, or out of the, prep recruiting, where it's kind of a coin flip what you're getting, especially first year, you're probably not getting much of anything. I think it's a pretty easy decision. So I know there's more to it than that, but ultimately those are kind of the decisions the schools make, and those are also the decisions the players make, and those decisions are made together. So I mean, I don't know if I answered the question entirely or just talked myself in circles, but my feeling from this all along is like, it's probably just as simple as like, who can help you right now? And I'm sure there are times where you do have to take into account the big picture. And that's why you take a dart throw at a Luke Moga or a Trent Ferguson, the guys we were talking about a moment ago. But this is a business where what happens in the short term matters more than the long term a lot of the time. And it's, I think, a real challenge for coaching staffs to kind of balance it. And I will be really curious to see what the future holds for the portal, because I do think there are ways that this could be streamlined probably a lot better than they are currently.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a coaching staff can be as systematic, and we'll take the quarterback position because it's the one that's the most obvious that somebody is going to transfer more likely because they can't start, other than if an offensive lineman transfers because of playing time. Well, they're just not good enough to be one of your top 5 to 7 offensive linemen.
Yeah.
So they're going to transfer out. Whereas you could have a tremendous quarterback, but he's playing behind one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and he's not going to get playing time.
Sure.
That this situation is, well, the fans disconnect. I'll take it in that direction. To
Right.
me, is fans are emotional, and that's not a knock on being a fan. That's one of the reasons. That's one of the components of being a fan, is you're emotional. And so the loyalty, of course, you're loyal to your team because you have no career investment in that. So each one of us have made career decisions on what job we're taking based on location, based on money, probably first and foremost, based on career advancement, based on all those things that are the same components that these players are reviewing when they look to see how they can advance their careers. So we can be upset at the system, or if we want to take like an old school saying, we can be, hate the game, not hate the player, because this is the way it's played.
That's exactly right. That's where, to me, the frustrations are too often thrown at the wrong people. We jumped into this without really creating a lot of guidelines, and now we're kind of retroactively trying to figure it out. And this is where we are. And I'm sure you, Mark, saw Chip Kelly's comments and probably reacted to them on your show, but I think he said a lot of accurate things about there needs to be someone whose sole job is to just run college football. There's so many moving parts, and the fact that there isn't somebody here to do that, and there's no centralized body, and that all these conferences and all their member schools are off kind of working on the same rules, but also different rules with different. It's just I agreed with a lot of what Coach Kelly had to say, and that's not just because he's a former Oregon great, but because I think he made a lot of sense, and I'm happy that somebody came out and kind of. That's more than the portal. He's talking about a realignment and a lot of other things, but I thought his comments were pretty spot on.
Oh, absolutely. I do too. And, it's something we've talked about on here for years and years and years. So I'm not saying that I'm the first one to bring it to light, or anybody's the first, but he said it in such a way, obviously, he, number one, as the platform being who he is, and number two, he said it in a very succinct, understandable way. But, people are always asking on here, why was this decision made? Why was that decision made? Well, take any conference commissioner. They are not employed by college football to do what's best for the sport. They're employed by the conference to make the conference as much money as possible, to widen the reach of that conference, the influence, the brand, to build that conference. And if it's that to the detriment of all of college football and their sister conferences, then so be it. But Greg Sankey's hired by the SEC, not by college football, to do what's best for college football. And that's why the NFL works, because all the owners are in it together, and the commissioner, they are in it. It doesn't do the NFL good if the AFC West is, a moneymaker and the AFC East is horrible and nobody cares about the AFC. That doesn't do the good of the league. So they make decisions for the good of the entire league. And that isn't done in college football, because there's nothing to other than the playoff and deciding, okay, how are we going to get together at the end to play in a playoff? There's nothing else that brings these conferences together.
Yeah, college football is like if the MLS, Major League Baseball, NFL, and NBA all decided to play a championship against each other, and they had all sorts of different rules going on, and then they just met at the end, because there's no, it's only so minorly aligned. Like you're playing the same sport. Obviously, I'm joking, because the hypothetical I mentioned is different sports, and you couldn't do that. But the fact there's no centralized governing body has driven me nuts for years, but you're seeing why, because right now you're moving into this point of all sorts of things taking place, and it just doesn't feel like there's anybody really guiding the ship. So the ship's kind of guiding itself, and that maybe isn't the way people want it, the best way to do things.
And I think the event that brought this to light more than any was COVID.
Yeah.
Where the NCAA had no power over anyone, and each conference did whatever it wanted to.
It's a good point. I mean, that was the ultimate example of the Pac-12 and the Big Ten were doing one thing, and then the SEC and the ACC and the Big 12 were doing another thing. And then you look up even retroactively at the season, and it's like some Pac-12 teams played 3 or 4 games, but some SEC teams played a full season basically. And you're kind of going like, yeah, that's sort of telling in terms of the lack of cohesive leadership.
What it looked like to me, Eric, at the time was you got a really good thumbnail inside look at how these conferences operate and what their values are. The SEC basically said, we're playing football. Now we're going to do everything we can to keep everyone safe, but we are playing football. And so we're going to work toward that end, but we're playing football. And then as soon as the ACC and the Big 12 saw that, they were like, well, we're the SEC's playing, we're going to play football too. So they were in that round. Then you saw the Pac-12 on the other end of the spectrum, basically saying this is a national emergency. It's a severe situation. We're not playing football. The Big Ten was the one that was interesting in this aspect. The elitists, the academicians, we're not playing football, but the public outcry and the coaches and the players from the common fan was so overwhelming that they turned it eventually and changed the decision. So it was interesting to take all that in.
What a time to be alive.
Yeah. Well, Eric, we appreciate you stopping by. Again, we know how much you got going on, and with this late flip from Jeremiah McClellan, trying to get all that information out there on a timely basis. So everybody catch Eric here, just coming up in we're about 2 hours away from Eric's podcast that's going to drop with Dan Lanning. So Eric, thanks for being here. We appreciate it.
Always fun, Mark. Yeah, just reach out. We'll probably do something before the Fiesta Bowl, I'm sure.
Excellent. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.
Eric Scopel, 247 Sports Duck Territory. Oh, we got a little drive-by coming our way. Look at this. Jason Priester's here. Jason, how's it going?
It's going, man. It's going. How about you?
I am doing just fine. You can catch Jason on allclemsontigers.com. Joins us on a regular basis to break down, of course, the Clemson Tigers. Got some drama for us?
Not a lot of signing day drama. Kind of, I think the class is done. We had a couple of late additions here, two that just jumped on board today, and offensive lineman Elijah Thurman and offensive lineman Mason Wade. Had been committed to Duke since June. Both those guys committed and signed today. Thurman's a 4-star. Wade's a 3-star who had a ton of offers coming out of high school. Gives Clemson 4 offensive linemen. Me and you talked extensively about how Clemson struggled, recruiting offensive linemen and this 2024 class. And now all of a sudden we get to sign today and they've got 4. That they added their second commit late last week with Watson Young, a local guy who's a legacy guy, and he joins Ronan O'Connell, who's been on board since June. So, again, a total of 4, some versatility within those guys. The weak link, maybe it's not quite as weak as what we originally thought it was going to be when it comes to the offensive line. But, man, really like what Clemson did in this class at the skill spots, man, with Bryant Wesco and TJ Moore at wide receiver and David Ajamame at running back, add in Christian Beckcure there at tight end. A lot of dynamic playmakers that can stretch the field. Clemson's kind of lacked the ability to push the ball down the field. It seems like when they try to, hit some of those explosives, it's been a struggle. And Moore and Wesco can both stretch the field for you. Ajamame's a home run threat every time he touches the ball. I think that's something he brings different to the table when you compare him to Phil Maffa or Will Shipley. Those guys are great, solid running backs. Just kind of like that top end speed that Ajamame's got. And Beckcure, man, he's just he's going to be a mismatch problem. 6'5". I think he's already about 240 pounds. Does a lot of pass catching in the offense he plays in high school up there in Illinois. But love what Clemson did, on the offensive side. This comes a year after I thought they kind of retooled on defense, and now here they are kind of revamping some of the skill spots on offense. So I think they're getting a lot of value with a lot of these guys on the offensive side of the ball.
So the guys that you just talked about on that side of the ball, are those the most likely to make an impact right out of the gate in 2024? Or are there some other guys that you think might be ready to play?
I think those 2 wide receivers can be instant impact guys. Wesco's going to enroll early. Dabo Sweeney made it sound like today that there was maybe a slim possibility he might be here for bowl practices, if I'm remembering that right. TJ Moore doesn't enroll until the summer. Wesco's a guy that's probably going to need to put a little bit of bulk on before he's really ready to play every down. Probably have time to do that between now and the start of next season. I think TJ Moore will step on campus physically ready. But I think those 2 guys are going to have a lot of early opportunities. Bo Collins, transferred out. And Clemson has really lacked a dynamic playmaker out there on the boundary, not Bo Collins, but Clemson's not had that alpha dog wide receiver here in recent years. I think Wesco and Moore, particularly Moore, can give you that out there on the boundary, man. I just love what both those guys bring to the table. Soft hands, they go up high point the ball. TJ Moore's film is just full of highlight reel catches. They have a tendency to burn man-on-man coverage. I mean, there's just a lot to like about those guys. Beckcure and Ajamame's probably their situation is going to be a little bit different. Ajamame is going to probably join what already is a crowded running back room, depending on what happens with Will Shipley. Even if he leaves, you still got a pretty crowded room there with those guys, with Maffa and the freshman you signed last year with Jarvis Green and Jay Haynes, and then you still got Keith Adams Jr.'s there. So we'll see what Ajamame can do when he gets here. He is going to be one of those guys who's taking part in some of the bowl practices. And Beckcure, same thing with him. There's going to be some guys in front of him. Obviously, Jake Brenningstool, Josh Sapp still around. Olsen Pat Henry's a freshman who got on the field some this year. Marcus Dixon's another guy they like a lot who's already on campus and is a freshman. So those 2 guys, it might be a little bit harder to get some opportunities and say, it will be for Wesco and more, because I think those guys are going to have a lot of early opportunities to show what they can do.
Jason Priester's here talking up Clemson football, of course, National Signing Day. And you can catch Jason's work at allclemsontigers.com. You see it right there. Follow Jason on X. You can see his Twitter/X handle, whatever you want to call it, right there. Jason, I'm going to take you down the board. So you've done a nice job of reviewing a lot of these player profiles. What if we go deep down the board here? Not that you have to address these guys, but some of the guys that may be a little bit more underregarded. Is there anybody that you really like that you think could surprise?
C.J. Cooper-Taylor, the linebacker out of Good Counsel. He's a teammate of Darian Mayo, who they're bringing in at defensive end in this class, who's another guy I really like. He's not going to enroll early, but I think he's going to be a guy that has a lot of early opportunities, but he's more of a highly rated guy. Cooper-Taylor kind of came out of nowhere. You know, a lot of us kind of assumed Bradley Shaw, 4-star linebacker, was going to be a part of this class, and you know, find out late in the process he's heading to Arkansas. So Clemson quickly moves on to get Cooper-Taylor on campus late last week for an official visit. And when I went and watched this kid's film, man, I was impressed. Talked to somebody that watched him play a lot, and he's kind of a late bloomer. Transferred to Good Counsel before his senior season, and he played on a team with a lot of other 5-star talent like Aaron Childs. He played beside Aaron Childs, who's the linebacker that's committed to Florida. But the light seemed to really come on for him over the second half of the season. I think he was an all-region player in the WCAC league up there, whatever they call it, man. I think he's a guy that could find his way into the rotation, you know, come maybe as a sophomore or junior. Not saying he's going to come in and play as a freshman or anything like that, but there's a lot to like when you watch his film. Same thing with Mason Wade, the offensive lineman they just flipped from Duke today. You know, I love what they've got in him. And let's go all the way down to the bottom of the list there, because I don't want to skip this guy, the kicker. No, I've been saying it Nolan Hauser. Dabo was pronouncing it Nolan Hoosier today. So Nolan Hoosier, I'm going to go with that. Clemson's struggles in the kicking game, well documented this season. You know, they brought in this highly rated kicker from the high school ranks last year. He was coming off of ACL, and, man, he just struggled mightily for whatever reason when it came to kicking field goals. Lost that job. They brought in another kid by the name of Jonathan Weiss, who you know, he filled in all right, had his best game of the year in the last regular season game. But he's not going to be here next year, so there's going to be an open void there. And Nolan Hauser's, my opinion, best kicker in the country. A couple of the services, I think Chris Saylor Kicking's got him rated as the top kicker in the country. He holds the record for most field goals as a high school player nationally, if I'm not mistaken, was 66. I was talking with somebody earlier today. You know, I cover high school football on every Friday night, and I rarely see anybody line up to kick a field goal. This kid's kicked 66 of them, man, and he's got a strong leg. So kickers kind of get overlooked sometimes, but I think he's a big part of this thing. And I also love what Clemson's done on the back end with some of these defensive backs. I thought they knocked it out of the park in the 2023 class with guys like Avion Terrell, Khalil Barnes, Shelton Lewis. And now you're, you know, just bringing in more talent on top of that. You got corners Devoy Fegan, Corey, and Gibson. Gibson was one time a top 100 player in the country. I don't know why he got deemed so hard. Two very talented corners. Same thing as safety with Noah Dixon and Ricardo Jones, two dynamic guys. Jones is just a ball hawk, seems to be around the ball. Don't know a lot about this Joe Wilkinson kid yet. Watched a little bit of his film last night. He likes to bring the wood. He was a late addition to the class yesterday out of Rome, Georgia. And then to meet a wild card's Ashton Hampton, not one of the more highly rated guys. Kind of like a Swiss Army knife, man. You can play him at corner, you can play him at safety, you can play him at nickel. Sounds like they're gonna slide him in at corner to begin with, but he's long, he's athletic, he's fast, he's a typical Mike Reed corner, man. I love what they did on the back end of this class, man. And we can't talk about this class without mentioning Sammy Moore, obviously. I mean, Sammy Brown, obviously. He's the cornerstone of the class, 5-star kid, the most highly rated kid in the class, and helps out Clemson a lot that Barrett Carter's coming back. It means you don't have to rush Sammy Brown into some starting role maybe before he's ready. But it's going to be hard to keep that kid off the field, man. He just does a little bit of everything, man. He played a lot of running back in high school, as well as linebacker. I mean, he's versatile and he's athletic and he's fast. He just moves so smoothly. He's got that sideline to sideline speed and he's good in coverage. And add in Wade Woodaz as a little brother, as the third linebacker take. I think Clemson's done really well with the linebackers. All in all, not a bad class. Particularly when you look at the skill spots and on the back end of that defense and a couple of other spots on that defensive side, and Sammy Brown and I'm a big fan of the Darian Mayo take too, man. I think he's 6'7", 260-pound defensive end. Explosive first step. There's a lot to like about that kid.
Jason Priester, allclemsontigers.com. Jason and I get together every week to talk Clemson football. We post those segments over on our Clemson channel, so we know we've got a few different folks here listening to us, so you may not be aware, again, about Jason's work on allclemsontigers.com and also the segments that we post every week over on the Clemson channel. We also have a Clemson show on Thursday nights with Jordan Bowman and Tiger Paw Craven to know about as well. Jason, busy day. Thanks for making it work for us. We appreciate it. Good to see you.
Got in just in time, man. My pleasure.
All right, Jason. Thanks.
You said it, bud.
All right. Great stuff from Jason. Again, we get together every week to talk Clemson football and post those segments over in the Clemson channel. We've got Nick Snow stopping by to talk Badgers. Nick joins us from SB Nation's Bucky Fifth Quarter. And Nick, how you doing today?
Good, Mark. How are you?
I am doing just fine. I haven't even had a chance, since we've been just rolling through these one after one, to check out the Wisconsin class or see where they stand. So we will look up those numbers. Where do we stand in Wisconsin? And is there going to be any late day drama?
Yeah. I don't know about drama going against the Badgers today, but so far of their 20 known verbal commitments, all 20 have signed. And the expectation is that they could add at least one or two guys here this afternoon. Ernest Willer from Maryland, a defensive lineman, he's ranked top 150 in the country, is expected to announce his decision here at around 2:30. And then the sneaky commitment they're kind of waiting on is a local kid from the Madison, Wisconsin area. His first name escapes me, but his last name's Booker. And he was formerly a commit of the Wisconsin football or of this class, decommitted, committed to UCLA, and then has since been kind of a known maybe flip on the day of signing. So far today, there were no surprises. Everyone has signed who was expected. There was one player who we weren't really sure if he was going to end up a Badger or not. It was Xavier Lucas from Southern Florida. He had offers from Florida State and Miami was making a really late push for him. But he signed this morning, and he's a really strong addition to the class and probably going to be a nice corner for the Badgers, a position that really Luke Fickell has come in and prioritized, making the secondary bigger, longer, more athletic. So they've got nice pieces here. So far, so good today.
Awesome. So, Nick, of course, it would be easy just to go to the top of the board and say, well, these are the best players. Obviously, they're rated the highest. But I will leave it to your discretion in regards to just a few guys that you think, whether they have the top end ability and are development players that may pay off really in 2 or 3 years, as has been the Wisconsin way for a long, long time, or could make an immediate splash this fall.
Yeah, well, let's start with what we're looking at right now on the defensive line, because I really think Dylan Johnson, who is committed to play, he was formerly a Northwestern recruit for under Pat Fitzgerald from Illinois, had committed to play there, and then as soon as all that stuff went down in Northwestern, he flipped his commitment to Wisconsin. He's also potentially going to wrestle this winter or next winter as well, so he will be a dual sport athlete. But I really think that he could find time early on a defensive line that really needs a lot of help. And Fickle has been exploring the transfer portal for additional defensive line depth. But I really think any one of it's him and then Ernest Wheeler again, who's supposed to commit here this afternoon at some point, and the rumors are that he's likely going to be a Wisconsin Badger, which would, either of those guys could end up playing on the defensive line. The other guy I'll probably point to, and really you could talk about Dylan Jones, but Darian Dupree really fits what Phil Longo wants to do. Darian Dupree is from Illinois as well, Mount Carmel. Absolute stud. And again, you see the comment right here below that Darian Dupree has the ability to do everything Phil Longo wants a running back to be able to do. He can run routes and catch the ball out of the backfield, and as well as line up in the slot. He's really a versatile player that I think is going to be a really key piece. Again, Badgers are now losing Braylon Allen. Ches Malusi still kind of a question mark for next year. Of course, he broke his leg against Purdue earlier this season. So I think any one of those running backs that the Badgers are bringing in could play. But I really think Darian Dupree is a sleeper in this class. Dylan Jones is another. Again, he's the highest ranked recruit according to 24/7. He's another guy who has a really good chance to play this year. His recruitment at the end, it sounded like Ohio State had gotten involved to try to push to make a run for him, and he didn't budge at all. So I think the running backs and the D line are going to have the best chance to play right away, and the rest of these guys might be more the developmental Fickle guys. We'll see them in 2 or 3 years type of deal.
Considering the season coming in at 7-5 could have been better, then it looked like it could have been worse. And the team rallied with a couple W's late there against Nebraska and Minnesota to salvage a winning season and get to a bowl game in a sizable matchup against LSU. They're kind of swinging up in pay grade, at least for this particular season, not talking all time, of course, but just talking about this LSU team. Even though Jaden Daniels won't play in the ball game. And there's always speculation as to, okay, trying to size up these two teams. And then with the opt-outs, what is this going to look like? But how important is this game to Wisconsin, whether that is just a better look for 2023 or going forward?
There's so much still, in flux for the Badgers in this transition period. And I really think expectations, were high coming into this year just because you had Fickle come in and you brought in all these nice transfers and you thought maybe the transition would be a little smoother. Obviously that didn't happen. So the expectation for the bowl game, I think, is really to see some of these young guys that we haven't seen yet. And again, LSU definitely swinging up this year. I don't think the Badgers match up too favorably against them at this point. Braylon Allen's not playing. You got an offensive, or there's Tanner Bortolotti, who's the center for the Badgers, isn't playing. There's a couple of guys on defense who aren't playing, so they'll be without some of their guys too. The Badgers will be without some of their guys too, and so the expectation, I think, is to just see where we're at with things, and I don't think that the bowl game's overly important considering what happened this season. 7-5, again, not where the Badgers wanted to be in the last year, the Big Ten West. So I think this is, again, I think the last time we talked, Mark, we kind of briefly had chatted about what the expectations were moving forward for Luke Fickle. And I think we're kind of in a 2 to 3 year transition window right now where it's never going to look very pretty. Or it's not going to look very pretty. And maybe they pull off an upset next year. Obviously they got a pretty tough schedule. But just for the bowl game purposes, I think we're just looking to kind of hang around and maybe see if we can make something happen. But who knows? Maybe something happened during bowl prep that all of a sudden now their offense isn't quite as inept as they were during the season.
Nick, I've got to ask you about Tyler Van Dyke, because he's a big name across college football, and I've been watching him for a long time. He had a stretch of games, 8 games, I believe, in 2021, where 350 every week, 3 or 4 touchdown passes against some of the better defenses in the ACC. And he looked like he was setting himself up as a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. Injury issues in 22. Then he comes back in 23. And at the beginning of the year, he looked like he just, boom, picked up where he left off in 21, had a remarkable game against one of the most talented defenses in college football, Texas A&M. But the last 5, 6, 7 games of the year, he was just a turnover machine. A lot of people don't think he can really is advanced in reading defenses and gets fooled a lot. Your thoughts about the quarterback edition?
I've been tricked a lot on quarterbacks as a Wisconsin football fan. And it goes back a long ways since Russell Wilson, really. Russell Wilson was the top, will always be the top quarterback to have ever played as a Badger, at least at this point. I can't imagine it changing. And then they went to Danny O'Brien, and he was also another transfer portal guy or graduate transfer guy who did not do well at Wisconsin. Tanner McAvoy, who ended up playing safety for the Badgers at the end of it, when it was all said and done. And then you went to Joel Stave, who was not real good. Alex Hornibrook, Bart Houston, Jack Cohn was probably the last good quarterback the Badgers really had, because quite frankly, Graham Mertz underperformed where Jack Cohn was every year. And obviously Graham Mertz moved on to Florida. So and then you had Tanner Mordecai this year, who I thought was going to be a ton better. So I feel like as Badger fans in general are just kind of weary of quarterbacks. And then you kind of hear some of the stuff that went on at Miami and you're not really sure. Like, again, this guy isn't coming in with the same pedigree he had 2 years ago. What Badger fans know about him is that he, again, was a turnover machine at the end of the year, and that he had at one point been benched for a freshman and then came back in at the end of the year and finished the year a little stronger than he had, the middle of his year. But I don't know what the expectation is, because Phil Longo has typically had a somewhat mobile quarterback. And this, I don't think Tyler Van Dyke really fits that mold at all. And if Tyler Van Dyke's going to be effective in the Phil Longo offense, the skill position players are going to have to be significantly better than they were this year, which is where the Badgers really were struggling. I don't think it was like a Mordecai problem. I think it was that Wisconsin didn't have the right players to play in the system. So we'll see what happens. I'm sure that Tyler Van Dyke is a nice player. I don't think Badger fans are getting their hopes up too high for too many significant changes. But hey, maybe this is the year that we're a little surprised that things go a little bit better, because the quarterback position has been a little bit of a pain in the butt for Wisconsin fans for a long time.
Absolutely. You can catch Nick Snow's work, Bucky's Fifth Quarter College Football on SB Nation. You can see the Twitter/X handle there, where you can follow Nick at BIG, as in Big Ten, BIG _ Nick. Nick, appreciate you stopping by, setting things up for us concerning Wisconsin football. And if you've got some investment in the bowl game, hope you can take that one for Wisconsin in the Big Ten.
That'd be pretty cool. We are cheering for the Big Ten this bowl season. So,
all right. Yeah. 9 games for the Big Ten. Absolutely. All right, Nick. Appreciate you being here, man.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
All right. We are rolling along here at the Voice of College Football on National Signing Day. Up next, we've got Steve Deace, Different Stream. So Steve Deace, Michigan, Alabama preview coming up 3 p.m. Eastern time. So about 15 minutes from now. Keep it right here. New live stream, college football playoff centric, Alabama, Michigan in particular, of course. We will talk some Washington and Texas as well with Steve Deace, Michigan podcast, live right here. So please join us. Then we're going to come back. It just keeps going, folks. Just keeps going. Just keep rolling. At 4:30, we will be back with more National Signing Day coverage, an update with Kentucky and Ohio State. You want to be here for that. And then we won't even tell you what we got planned after that, because we'll just keep you one step at a time. So it's Steve Deace right here live from Michigan podcast at 3 p.m. Eastern time. And then we've got another National Signing Day. I was going to say transfer portal. That's what comes out of my mouth, is forced to come out of my mouth about every other sentence these days. National Signing Day update coming at 4:30 Eastern. We will see you in 15 minutes, folks. Of us are on the internet pretty much all the time. It's fun. You get to socialize, you get entertained, and in this day and age, it's pretty much necessary. And even if you're one of those people that's not on the internet all the time, you know what is? Your personal information. And there are people out there trying to hack you all the time. They want your email address, they want your phone number, they want your place of employment, and they want to do bad things with it. There's also fairly legitimate corporations and companies that want your information. They want it for marketing purposes. They're going to buy it. They're going to sell it. They're going to trade it. At the very least, it's annoying to you. It's a nuisance. It's aggravating. Your email gets cluttered up with spam email. You get robocalls all the time. That's at the very least. At the worst, it's a threat to your family, to your friends, to your personal information, to your banking, to your finances, to your security, to your safety, to your identity. It can be pretty serious. This video is sponsored by Aura. I got hacked and it was pretty obvious. This was about 8 or 9 months ago, and there were red flags all over the place. And I didn't exactly know what to do, but I knew I needed to do something quickly. I mean quickly. I researched 8, 10, or 12 companies immediately. I went all over the place. I asked people. I was online looking for the best company that could serve my needs and secure my information. You know who I found? Aura. And I'm glad I did. It was amazing. I contacted them. They got right back to me immediately. Their customer support is phenomenal. Their customer service is first-rate, friendly. They are detailed. They know what they're doing, and they do it right, and they will protect you. In addition to everything I just mentioned, they've got a password keeping service. They keep your credit score. They notify you anytime there's a possible data breach. This has happened to me a number of times. I'm getting notifications all the time when there's a possible compromise to my credit score or anything that I don't want. They've got a VPN that will allow you to browse the internet anonymously. It's amazing. And again, customer service support available 24/7. Click the link in the description section below and get 2 free weeks of Aura. Protect your finances, protect your information, protect your privacy, protect your identity. I did, and I'm glad I did. Aura, thank you so much for what you've done for me, and now for my Voice of College Football community.